Greetings, fearless YouTuber. Welcome to my channel. My name is Tom Stevenson. I'm an engineer from the Gold Coast of Australia. Spotify has definitely had the lion's share of interest amongst my clients for the last few years. Some artists are pretty particular in that they know that they want to focus on SoundCloud, they know that they want to focus on YouTube, etc. But even those artists will put their music on Spotify and will focus at least part of their campaign on getting their Spotify numbers up. And I suppose this is the most critical issue, is that Spotify is a numbers game. And that can be very convoluted and confusing and kind of steer you off the path of just being a musician. Because when it becomes a numbers game and all you're looking at is that monthly listeners, you just need to either maintain or see that number going up. I think that can divert you away from the true goal here, which is developing a fan base who will actually embrace you and support you through your career, not just for that particular month because you made it onto some playlist, but actually hang around. The numbers that you see each month have little to no correlation to your actual subscribers and to people who are going to hang around. I'm sure artists out there who have been lucky enough to make their way onto a Spotify curated playlist or onto a user-generated playlist, while the numbers go up during the time that they're on that playlist, it doesn't really reflect long-term. It doesn't reflect on the subscriber numbers. It doesn't seem to have any longevity. You'll just have that boost for that month or two that your song is on the playlist. I find that's very, very different to what I've experienced on rolling back into MySpace times, when people who did listen and engage with your music were genuinely engaged. You know, there was a way for them to communicate with you. People felt a bit more ownership over their sort of curated music library. Spotify just seems, it's too flippant. There's no real grabbiness. It's something will appear in a playlist. You may never even find out the name of the song, the name of the artist. You may know nothing. You'll just hear the song. You may hear it dozens of times in the period while it's on a playlist that you subscribe to. But there's no real lasting impression. That's not a huge issue, but I do feel like the fundamental Spotify model is based purely on those metrics, and I think that's just skewing the entire industry's take on what streaming could be and the relationship between the artist and the streamer. At the very, very start, it was quite exciting. You know, coming from distribution with CDs and vinyl, I'm quite old, so that's where I began. That felt really tangible and real. You know, you would record an album, you'd get CDs pressed, you'd take them to gigs, you'd sell them, you'd meet people, you'd get revenue. It felt good, it felt real. Like I said, you had that engagement with your audience. That said, the numbers were low. You might get a few hundred CDs printed, you'd sell them eventually, but it would take time. It would be a bit of a dribble, but it had some just personal merit and worth to it because you felt like you were achieving something. Streaming came along, and initially I was very excited. I was like, oh my God, you know, now I've got the whole world, you know, I'm not just reliant on the CDs I can bring to the gig for people to hear my music, you know, I can get this in people's ears all the time. So the first time, maybe back in 2014, 2015, that was the first time I published music digitally. And it was super exciting. The numbers were really encouraging. I'm getting like hundreds of listeners a day, and yeah, it was really great. Being able to see it go across all these different platforms, most of which are very lowly trafficked, especially at the time. But just to see the numbers on Spotify and grow a presence on there, it was really, really exciting. But in that time, I've had so many disappointing experiences with Spotify that it's just been completely soured. Let's start with the annoying things. So the most annoying thing is a relatively recent issue that's reared its head, which is botted playlists. If you're an artist on Spotify, I'm sure you've got experience with this, and if not, I'll give you a bit of a description. So there's these disreputable, I don't know if they're promoters or labels, I'm not really sure who these people are, but they create these playlists that seemingly are entirely supported by bot farms. So when you make it onto the playlist, all the listeners that you're getting, all the streams you're getting, are essentially fake. They're, I don't know how they're doing it. There must be a bunch of virtual machines just streaming your song over and over. But it basically inflates your numbers for a short period of time. And the reason for this, or the goal of these botted playlists, seems to be twofold. The first one is they'll put you on a playlist for 24 hours and you'll see a huge spike in your numbers. So overnight, you'll just see like an 8,000% increase in the number of listeners, but then they'll drop it. Your song will go back to its regular daily streams. And more often than not, you'll either get contacted or you'll just see like, oh, your song during that period was added to this specific playlist. The playlist is very easy to identify, either a website or a label associated with it. It's really frustrating for a bunch of reasons. It screws your numbers. I guess that's the main one. So you can't, those streams that you get in that period, they don't help you, obviously. They're not your demographic, they're not your target audience, they're fake. It's just, it doesn't mean anything and it'll ruin your algorithm. So basically, your Spotify algorithm is determined by the type of people listening to your music, the other artists that they listen to. When you get added to one of those playlists, it just ruins those statistics. All of a sudden, who knows who's listening to your stuff, who knows what else they like to listen to, it just cooks it. Second thing is, these companies will more often than not contact you after they've added you to this playlist and dropped you and said, hey, did you like that little taste of success? Did you enjoy that? Well, for this fee, we can add you to that playlist permanently, or another playlist, you know. So that's kind of an awful tactic, because people do get suckered in by it and they might pay this company to add them to yet another botted playlist, which ruins their algorithm even more. And even though you're getting those streams, and you know, even best case scenario, I did have one particular client who was getting up to 1 million streams a month. Unfortunately, all through botted playlists, but 1 million streams a month, you know, it's nothing to be frowned at. But what does it mean? You know, for that brief period of time, yeah, you'll get a bit of revenue, no longevity, and they're not real. It's not real listeners. So yeah, what's the point of that? But the big problem, and the reason that I think Spotify is not only culpable for this, but are really evil in the way that they go about it, is, say you're added to one of these botted playlists, Spotify feels it's completely within their right to remove your music that was on that playlist and potentially remove you, so remove your artist profile as well, because completely beyond your control and against your will, you're added to this botted playlist. And Spotify, rather than punishing the people creating these playlists, which are very well known, like there is definitely no secret about who they are, they've been around for a long time, the strategy hasn't changed, like Spotify surely knows completely what's going on here. For some reason, rather than punishing the people at fault, they'll punish the artist, and they'll send you a cease and desist letter, they'll tell you to take your music down, or they'll just remove your profile entirely. They'll contact your distributor more often than not, and your distributor, for some reason, takes action. DistroKid's very guilty of this. Every time I've seen one of my clients who uses DistroKid get added to a botted playlist, inevitably they'll get an email from DistroKid saying that your music's been reported as being on a botted playlist and we're going to take your music down, or delete your entire profile, delete your whole your catalog of music. I think that's gross. I think that's terrible, like just rubbish on behalf of Spotify, and kind of doubly rubbish on part of the distributor, because the distributor's business model is entirely based on the artist. Like they're not getting kickbacks, well maybe they are, but the revenue is coming from the artist. So it really is in the distributor's best interest to look after the artist first and foremost. It's really, really frustrating that they perhaps are under duress and need to just cave in to Spotify's whims, but it really does shit me a little bit that they just flop over and die immediately, and you lose your whole catalog. You know, all of the work and time and effort you're putting into curating your music and getting it out there just gets taken away in an instant because some selfish bunch of pricks from one of these fake botted things add your song. So that's a big one. Well, the second thing that annoys me about Spotify, everyone knows this, the royalties that are paid. Streaming royalties are terrible across the board. There are no platforms out there that provide what most people would consider a fair royalty payment per stream. Spotify consistently comes in the bottom 3 in terms of payment per stream. I don't know what it is in a minute, but it's literally a fraction of a cent per play. For some artists, maybe this works, or at least it's not a detriment. So let's say you're a Beyonce or you're a Weeknd or whatever. You know, you're getting billions of streams, those fractions add up and you'll get some sort of revenue. But if you compare that revenue to what artists were getting when it was physical music, it really is pitiful. And for the vast majority of artists, it's embarrassing. Like it's offensive almost. The level of pay is just farcical. It really is a shame. And on top of that, there's a lot of cuts. So let's say you're a fully independent artist. You're still losing money on the platform itself, so you have to pay distribution, so that's gone. If you've purchased a beat, for instance, to use for your song, you need to pay your producer. That's 20 to 50% usually, can be more than that, but you know, producers getting their cut. And everything, all the other costs, promotion, recording the song itself, photo shoots, content, you know, all that gear, it all adds up. Essentially, the business model is so skewed against the artist that using streaming in general, but particularly Spotify, as a viable source of revenue for most artists, it's not an option. isn't in any way feasible. They're the two big ones. I find the botted thing just too ridiculous. I find it would be something that Spotify could fix overnight. They could very, very easily identify and remove these bot playlist curated people. Take them 10 seconds. Like there would be nothing involved. If you beat them to the punch as well, so say that you recognize, if you see your song on a botted playlist and you reach out to Spotify, it's like it's on you and you need to report it before anyone else does. And if you report it in time, Spotify will be like, oh, thanks for letting us know. We'll, take it off, or we'll do something or other. If you don't find it in time and they find it first, your account gets deleted. So anyway, that would take like 1 second to work out. The royalty split thing, I don't really know what the solution is there. I think the solution is maybe Spotify needs to just curb its enormous profits just a little bit to offer a bit back to the artists. That would be great. I did have an interesting conversation with a colleague recently who suggested that it would simply be a matter of charging a lot more for a Spotify subscription and passing those the extra revenue onto the artist. And initially, I shied away from that a bit. I felt like Spotify is already not expensive. It's on par with other streaming services, and considering other streaming services are shooting, entire series with casts and crew and plot lines, and Spotify is, for most independent artists is much smaller scale investment. So it seems a bit silly to me that Spotify is monthly fee-wise on par with like Stan and Netflix and whatever. But then I also thought, before all of this, before streaming media in general, we'd go to the store and in Australian dollars, you'd pay $30 to buy one CD. So basically you're paying half of that each month to have every CD in the entire world. So yeah, my colleague suggested bumping the monthly price up to $40. Sounds a bit crazy, but keep in mind, you have all of the music ever recorded essentially at your fingertips for that. And that amount of revenue could easily provide a decent kickback to artists. It could provide infinitely better support. Something Spotify also seems to be terrible at is providing support, and facilitating a better platform distributor relationship. Because at the minute, I have to say, the platform kind of sucks. Most distributors kind of suck, and getting them to work together is a nightmare. If you've ever had an issue with any music that you've released on streaming, whether it's just changing the artwork, fixing the artwork, providing an updated master, just getting the artist correct. So many times you've uploaded music and it appears on the wrong artist profile, or it appears in the wrong order, or all sorts of stuff. But getting that fixed, so talking to your distributor to get them to talk to Spotify, to get them to work it out amongst themselves, it can take forever. They usually get it wrong, and the whole time you have this feel of I'm being an inconvenience. I'm inconveniencing these giant corporations. I'm so sorry. It seems that it should be well within their capabilities to provide that service quickly and with efficiency and with a smile. As I said, again, at the end of the day, the commodity here, the only thing of value in this entire apparatus should be the artist. That should be it. The artist should be the be all and end all. And yet every single interaction I've ever had, the artist is the last consideration and the most inconvenienced at every step of the process. Let's look for some positivity here. Let's look for some alternatives. So a lot of bands, as you probably heard recently, have been pulling their music from Spotify. There's been some very public examples. It's well and good for an artist the size of King Giz, who has such a rabid fan base all over the world. They're going to be fine. Wherever they choose to put their music, people are going to listen to it. People are going to go out of their way to find it. They also have a very strong popularity of their vinyls. Not every artist has a fan base that is going to buy vinyl. Not every artist has vinyl for people to buy. So for artists like that, that's great. But for your everyday bedroom producer, for instance, having your music on Spotify, even if you hate the thing and it sucks and all the reasons I've just mentioned, it's kind of critical, because that's where most people are going to look first for your music. It's just so convenient. It's hard to step away from that, I can imagine. So viable alternatives, what is there? I've been talking about Bandcamp for quite a while. Way back in the day, I'm going to say, I don't know when Bandcamp started, but right at the very beginning, I remember jumping on it because it seemed like the sort of closest thing to what MySpace was offering previously, but it had paid options. So it was direct artist to audience transaction. You'd put your music up, you'd put a price on it, or you just say donate something if you want to download it. I saw the benefit for DJs because they can get, you know, high quality music. They can download the WAVs. It's, you know, not being compressed. Actually, let's look back for a second. The third thing that I should rag on Spotify about, and this is something else I just cannot understand, is that it sounds shit. It genuinely sounds shit. I don't know. Pick your current favorite album, and providing that it's also on Bandcamp, listen to it on Spotify, find one of the songs, just listen to it on Spotify, and then jump to the Bandcamp version. It's night and day. It's ridiculous that Spotify sounds as bad as it does. The bitrate is terrible. I don't know what they're doing with the normalization and the volume. I mean, I do know what they're doing. I have a pretty thorough understanding of what they're doing, but it means it sounds like absolute arse. It's terrible. One of the main reasons that I jumped off Spotify a few years ago was because I'm an engineer and I put a lot of effort and love and time into making the music I work on sound great. Then to go and just shove it in the muddy waters of this murky Spotify horrible tone, it sucked. It's just felt like, yeah, just making a masterpiece as polished as possible and then just flinging shit on it and presenting it all covered in poop. Really unimpressive. I'm not sure what the reason is there. I mean, even if you dial up, there is a tab inside the Spotify settings where you can say like always stream at 320 kilobits. You know, I want high quality streaming all the time. Even on those settings, still sounds terrible compared to anywhere else, compared to Bandcamp, compared to SoundCloud. So no idea what's going on there. Do have some idea what's going on there, but it's not good enough. Again, it seems like a really easy problem to fix. You're the largest streaming service, music streaming service on the planet. You have huge resources available. It really shouldn't be that hard to come up with a way to stream digitally, high quality. Anyway, perplexing. Don't understand, especially when a company like Bandcamp, which we'll get to in a second, it sounds amazing. You listen to anything on Bandcamp, whether it's on the web player, it's on the app, it's in the browser, it sounds fantastic. So whatever's going on there, I wish Spotify would sort that out because it drives me insane to no end. Anyway, back to Bandcamp. So as I said, joined Bandcamp very early on, really sunk my teeth into it, you know, put a lot of effort into promoting my music on Bandcamp. Every time there was a Bandcamp Friday, like really encouraging people to buy music on those days. Gave it a good pump. And then I got thoroughly distracted for the better part of a decade by all of the streaming platforms, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music. Like really, that was my focus. And more recently, the last couple of years, fully back to Bandcamp. I'm not aware of an alternative that provides that artist to consumer relationship as effectively as Bandcamp does, and just how fair it is. Bandcamp Friday is just an incredible illustration of how fair Bandcamp is. I know it's only once every now and again, but to just forfeit all of their percentage for that, just that one day, and knowing that every artist on their platform is going to be encouraging people to buy on that particular day so that Bandcamp doesn't get their cut. But to stick to it and to see the engagement that fans have on those days, I mean, it's amazing. Being able to name the price for your music, being able to buy the whole album or just one song or the entire catalog, you know, you can arrange your music however you like. You can sell it however you like, add the pricing you want, or say, name your price. You can offer it for $1 or more. People can just make a donation if they want to download your music. I think that's amazing. Having liner notes, which is something that I personally really miss from the physical music days, which is being able to engage and dig into something a little bit beyond the music. So, you know, when you used to buy CDs or vinyls, it would come with a booklet. It would tell you, hopefully at the very least, who recorded it, where it was recorded, how it was recorded, who played what, who mixed it, who mastered it. That was just, I don't know, a nice value add. And then on top of that, if they were feeling generous, you'd get lyrics, you might get stories, background, something, artwork that complements the music. There was a lot there beyond just listening to the music itself. Spotify, of course, is the polar opposite of that. You get nothing. You get the music, you get the artwork, but it's this big, it's tiny. Even just to see the cover art of an album in you know, full screen or HD, just enough to actually make out what's going on, it's not really a feature of Spotify. Bandcamp has that in spades. You've got a huge area which you can put in as many liner notes as you want. You can tell the entire story. You can tell your entire life story if you want to in that blurb. You can credit everyone. You can add tags. You can add artwork. There's an entire section for you to add your own imagery. It's just a lot more comprehensive and again provides that real artist-consumer relationship. And as I'm saying this, I wonder if that's a strategy on Spotify's behalf to keep the artist at arm's length, you know, keep the artist unengageable, you know, at least not on the Spotify platform. You can hit follow and that's it. You know, that's the maximum amount of engagement you're allowed with an artist on Spotify. You can hit that follow button. To me, that's not very satisfying. I want more, you know, I want to be able to, yeah, dig in a little deeper with the artists that I really appreciate, get some of that background information, understand where it was recorded, how it was recorded, why it was recorded, who worked on it, all that sort of stuff. And I think Bandcamp does that really well. So lately, I've been encouraging all of my clients to really invest the time in finding a platform that works for them, that suits their music, that they can manage and they can have a bit of accountability with, rather than just flinging songs up into the streamosphere and hoping for the best. So yeah, Bandcamp. Bandcamp's full endorsement from me. Also need to recognize that Bandcamp is a bit niche. Not the Bandcamp itself, but it sort of promotes niches, I guess. I do see that cinematic and soundtrack music is very popular for listeners to engage with on Bandcamp. People do seem really passionate and they do sort of buy the latest release from the artist in that genre that they love. They leave comments, they engage. I'm assuming they donate or they pay full price for the album. Same within metal, particularly black metal, I've noticed has a very strong engagement on Bandcamp. Releases from new artists are immediately noticed and purchased and commented upon by listeners. I've noticed that outside of those specific genres, and I'm sure there's other little niches within Bandcamp that I'm not familiar with, but pop, rock, folk, singer-songwriter, sort of, I guess, more mainstream genres. From what I've seen, perhaps because it's a lot more saturated, but inside Bandcamp itself, I don't see quite as much engagement in those genres. Even from big bands, you can see underground black metal band will have, you know, a lot of supporters under each album. You'll see a big long list of people who've purchased the album, and you'll see a handful of reviews and comments above that. Always a lot of engagement, but even quite large artists in the pop genre, you might see a handful of supporters per album and maybe a comment or two, but it doesn't seem to be that sort of, yeah, really strong, passionate listenership that you see in those sort of more niche genres. So that is something to be conscious of, but even so, if one person buys your album on Bandcamp, it's the equivalent of like tens of thousands of streams coming through Spotify. So you just need that one person who genuinely loves your stuff and is willing to part with a bit of cash so that they can say they own it. Again, the numbers don't add up, it's completely cooked, but that's how it is. Like and subscribe.